it's based on this kind of patriarchy that we see throughout, especially Muslim Africa, where women can't do anything without a man. And so, but they need this breed of women who are unpure to fight these demons that are taking over. It's a fantasy, it's that Afrofuturism. And it's beautiful the way she's setting it up because, women can't run, they can't have property, they can't drive, they can't do anything without having a father or man, and they have to be pure. They have to be pure, right? Except when trouble comes, and we need to train them to fight. And I was thinking about that. I was reading this morning, some of it, because I'm not finished with it yet. But I'm like, man, how we've been conditioned to even envision roles. I watched The Crown. It won an award at the Critics' Choice, won, I think, 4 awards last night. And I enjoyed it up until this season, of course, because I'm like, I lived through the Princess Di thing, and I'm not feeling Charles. He can go kick rocks with his dusty ass. So I didn't watch this season of The Crown, but I enjoyed it thoroughly until they got to Africa with Nkrumah. And I was like, I got salty, Doma T, because I'm like, there's a whole story here that is only told through this prince and queen, and all of this is told through this lens with the tea and crumpets. But there was a whole ass continent there before you got there with your debauchery, with your damn rape, your evil. Yeah. That was thriving, that had their own kings and queens. Hell, Egypt had a pharaoh that was a woman, maybe a couple. If we're looking at history, there's so many stories not told. I'm like tired of them already. And I feel like you're right. You don't want to be Michael from Good Times, but we all need to turn into Michael from Good Times because this is some bull crap. And we think about 60 to 70% of the Commonwealth. And Meghan Markle said this in the interview. I'm going out now. Her job is to go out and represent the monarchy, where 60 to 70% of the Commonwealth looks not like her because she's very light-skinned in it.
Right.
They're people of color. They're brown and black people, 60 to 70%. So representation, now you finally glimpse somebody that has some melanin and you're like, wait a minute. They didn't want her there because they want those 60 to 70% of the people to idolize that alabaster skin. And Meghan Markle's not that. 45 sovereign nations in the world have monarchs, including the 16 Commonwealth realms that Queen Elizabeth is the head of state. Barbados just shook that yoke off a couple of years ago, but they've been independent 50 years and still have this chick as their head of state.
You see?
Until a couple of years ago. This queen who did nothing but be born. Like, stop it. What value does she have outside of that title that puts her in a position that I got to curtsy to her deeply at her very presence?
I think what is genius in the monarchy, in the United Kingdom, was their ability to outsource these atrocities. I keep using the word outsource because it's the only thing I can think of, because there were people responding to the interview. I don't know if you've been seeing British Twitter been going in and they're saying things like, oh, we don't worry about race here in the UK. It's just as racism has its microaggressions and subtleties in America, they're even more subtle in the United Kingdom because they benefited from the slave trade, yet didn't have as many slaves on its shores. They benefited. You still have leaders that refuse to acknowledge what they've done in Jamaica. It was refused to apologize for hundreds of years of deprivation in all of these different countries. But they maintained this sense of decorum, this air of poise, and this regalia, these events, and they've made it such an entertainment destination that it's hard for some people to believe, even though you might even know it intellectually. Even myself, I'm not pointing the finger at folks. Even though I know these things intellectually, when you see these prim and proper folks in their suits and they're doing this ceremony, they don't seem like the same folks who perpetrated these things. It seems like those things happen from time past, but you just wait. Stick around those folks long enough, just like Megan said. They decided to be, they were welcoming at first until they realized that any family that is willing to engage in incest to maintain a royal bloodline, what the hell do you think they're gonna do with black folk?
866-801-8255 is the number, but it's even deeper than that. Much like Diana, who basically was doing her own thing out there with the AIDS victims, out there in Calcutta, hugging up the babies and showing the humanity that this crown never had. The popularity in that same space when they went through, I think it was Australia, and Prince Harry talks about, and they then Oprah does a brilliant job juxtaposing, Diana to Meghan Markle. She was superseding the crown, and you knew you could never supersede the crown. That's the problem. She was casting a shadow. She was eclipsing, the future king and queen and the queen herself. Problematic. And the king that will never be king, Charles. That's my opinion. I think he'll never be king. I said it. 866-801-8255. So there's a lot of jealousy. How dare she? It's because she's an actress. Then you want to diminish her. Now, listen, she was never a star here, but there's something special about Meghan Markle that, and I think it's a self-awareness, which is what I saw in this interview. Like, and I don't know what come to Jesus moment happened, but she leaned into her differentness. And by that, I mean her blackness in a way that she probably didn't utilize when she was coming up. You understand? Like, she probably leaned in on the white side because she could be fluid like that. Many of us, you and I, cannot be fluid. We are unapologetically and phenotypically black. Meghan Markle, not so much. Yeah. Imagine if she had the complexion of her mother.
Yeah.
I imagine if she were darker, it would be even like she was just light enough to pass until she became a problem. Meaning, now we're going to use this monkey thing. We're going, what's your child going to look like? I'm going to strip him or her of their title before they were even born against protocol. Why? Because what they're telling us is this white is due north. Yeah. And you're messing up. You're putting ink in this. You're putting that one drop of chocolate, which will undermine the whole thing comes crumbling down once you pull that thread. Meghan Markle pulled the thread. I'm happy that she did.
You know what? It brings to the forefront why the criticisms we see in pop culture end up being more important than we might have even thought when we start having these conversations. I'm talking about Bridgerton when they were talking about colorism. Like, I haven't watched Bridgerton, but from the articles I've read, most of the women that I saw after are fair-skinned women. The darker women, if they're in the show, they're in subservient positions or they're not desired by the men in the show. And so when you think about that issue, where that's set, and even though it's reimagining history with African, phenotypes, it's still, that colorism thing still is an issue. And you're absolutely right. Meghan Markle wouldn't have even gotten into proximity with the family had it not been for her skin color. And I think that when we point out colorisms in other realms, it all is ultimately an offshoot of these same ideas that have been outsourced from the United Kingdom, has been perpetuated. And sometimes you don't see how important these conversations are, how relevant they are until they happen to somebody that, we've adopted Meghan Markle as our princess cousin or something. So when it happens specifically to a real person, that you can tie this to, then it becomes clear. So it's, in some ways, I'm almost happy that we've had these types of awakenings, just like the awakening we had in 2020, because I kid you not, I was very cynical about the wedding when it first happened, and then surprised in the months after that the only drama we had was between Meghan and her dad. I'm like, it seems like, they're embracing her, whatever. This family's a figurehead anyway. Wouldn't make sense for them to castigate her anyway, to cast her aside anyway. And then all of these things come to a head, which is no surprise. No surprise.
Right. Because she is eclipsing Kate and Edward. 866-801-8255. Who keep pumping out babies to make sure that they don't ever see the. I got
a question for you though. Because you followed this closely. I don't know if you have the answer to this, but do you believe that Meghan Markle was really taken aback by all of these things? Like, she didn't know this history, or did she not think that this history would affect her because of her personal relationship with the family?
Well, what she said was she didn't study the monarchy. She fell in love with this man who happened to be this. And the first time she meets the queen, he's like, when you meet her, you got to curtsy. She was like, but it's in the house. Like, she thought this was all, the queen, Buckingham Palace, the soldiers, the royal this, the royal that. That's for show. But clearly in the house, we're going to act like normal people. No. And what she realized was that she was part of a firm, that they were the firm, they were institution. I looked at her as being in one of the worst corporate America situations, like to the 10th power. So you think about Black people in corporate America, where we have to fold and comport ourselves a certain way to make sure white people are not uncomfortable around us. Can't be too many of us around the world. Got to keep our dulcet tones. Got to wear our hair a certain way, Domity. You know what I'm saying? Can't come in with the hair natural. Oh, got to wear this suit. Got to wear these stockings. Maybe stockings. Damn, we're doing that. Yes, the sweaters, the whole thing. We have to talk like this. We can't split infinitives. No slang. Right. She's in a space to the 10th, like a corporate. She had to go to human resources to see if she can get some mental relief, some health relief for the trauma that she was experiencing. And they told her, no, it doesn't look good for the firm for you to go get help. What? She was part of an institution. And this is the connection that I make. We're all part of an institution. That's really the message here. We are in this matrix. We are in this hex. We are part of an institution that only thrives by our willingness to participate and go along with it. Even at our own demise, most of us are participating in our own demise, showing up. And I'm not saying you should quit your job, but showing up and following the rules that they've set for you to always be at the bottom. That caste system that you're talking about is set up globally. And a few of us get through, a few magical Negroes, because that's where it all, if we get a few of them through, then the rest of them will all aspire like Snow White, like Cinderella, like all of the others to just follow the rules. He'll come along and it'll never happen. But one will get through, and it's enough for the rest of us to aspire to that level because we know it's possible. One Barack Obama, 866-801-8255. The money, they did not receive money personally, but Oprah cashed in. 17.1 million viewers watched this 2-hour podcast, and it went to her production company. So CBS charged double what they normally charge. It was like the Super Bowl. They charged double what they charged, about $325,000 for a 30-second commercial. It was so many commercials in that first hour. It was like, oh my goodness. CBS, for a normal 30-second spot, this is double what they normally charge. They beat out ABC and NBC for the rights to air it. And Oprah Winfrey's Harpo production got paid between $7 and $9 million for the licensing to agree to show that on CBS. And that also includes international markets. She got paid. Good for her.
On a calm Sunday. Go ahead, Oprah.
Back in a moment. 866-801-8255. So it's interesting. I think I always want to look at these things, which is why I didn't watch it last night. I watched Twitter because that's, you can watch Twitter. It's like, but I was like, what does it mean for us today? And those of you who come from colonized spaces by this monarchy should ask yourself, why do we have the need for kings and queens? Why do we need a queen? Why do we need a monarchy? You said it's a figurehead, Domity, but I think it's so much greater. We think about 2.4 billion people right now are living under this monarchy, are living under some sort of monarchy. At Great Britain, you mentioned India, Pakistan, Nigeria, Bangladesh, Tuvalu, who I never heard of before. It's the smallest of the members, an island country in the Polynesian sub-region of Oceania, surrounded by the Pacific Ocean and situated midway between Hawaii and Australia. They're under the Queen. St. Kitts, Nevis, St. Lucia, St. Vincent's, the Grenadines, Solomon Islands, New Zealand, Jamaica, Grenada, Canada, Belize, Australia, the Bahamas, Barbados. Barbados no longer. Let me remove them, Antigua. All under this damn Bermuda. Is Bermuda on there too? Yeah, all under this rule. Like, what does that even mean to you people who come from this space?
It means that when I talk to African Americans, and we've done a couple conversations when we went back to on our trips to Ghana to unpack these things, right? Like I call it, like, our little nickname for the tour is like the last lie. The last lie they'll tell us is that the African diaspora isn't connected. And so we unpack the lies that we feel like we've been told in history. And we usually do this after we visit the slave dungeons, because every year that I go, I learn something new that I didn't know before. It might be something subtle about the way we were chained. It might be something about the way they didn't clean feces out of the cages. You learn something new about the brutality. And what you learn is that In Ghana still today, the way they learn about the UK and the way they